So let's do it. This is going to be the full build of a workflow from A to Z, and what the workflow accomplishes is to find the press or media or PR email address of a company from a given set of companies. The data I was provided by the client in this case contains always the company name, sometimes an email that the company uses. And what I will do is I will find domains for all of those companies based on their name in an efficient way, and then find the media contacts at those companies. Two things about that. There are always many ways to get to results, and the challenge specifically here is that kind of the typical LinkedIn search may be not as accurate as you want, because if somebody because you search for people basically, and if somebody is managing media relations and they have it on their profile, wonderful, you'll find them. But sometimes it may be just a general media ad or PR ad address, and this is more the case for these types of companies. And in order to deliver quickly, we decided to really just go for those addresses first. So here's how to build this. This is the input data: company name, company email, and this is what I've prepared will be the destination sheet, which will contain the company name, the company domain, and the press email. So the way this works, starting really from scratch, opening Clay, creating a new table, and then import companies from CSV. Doing just that. It's a super simple CSV. I cut out all the unnecessary columns that I don't want or don't need for this workflow, and only kept the essential ones that I can use to build the workflow on. Create a new table. It will pull in all those columns, which in this case will just be 2. Here we go. We have the company name and we have the company email. So instead of getting into clicking around, it's always good to think about what's the best, truest data that I have. And since I don't have the domains here and they are not yet in the client's CRM, I want to get to the company domains in order to do further work. And what's interesting, I have with some of the companies already a domain right here. I just need to extract it. What Clay offers is an enrichment that extract domain. I just used here extract domain, but then I can use this free integration that does exactly that. I can point it to the company email, and then this is basically a formula running on Clay's side to do just that, extract the domain. Zooming out one step, this is like really the basic structure of Clay. Always working in columns, and one column feeds into the other. Of course, this can be across the table. It doesn't always have to be chronologically as I'm trying to build it here, which can also make things sometimes a little more complicated. But basically in the end, you produce data in one column and you use that for further work in other columns. In this case, I point this integration to the email column. I don't want any of those fields mapped out. I will get to that in a minute, what that means. And because it's free, let's just run it for all the columns at once. So here we go. We can already see some of the results. Let me resize that a little bit. This is what we're getting here. And for most of those companies, actually, it will not lead to a result because there's no email address, but everywhere where we have an email address, we now have the domain. What does it actually mean that we have all these results in one column? What that means is Clay has produced the properties that contain data, and to be able to use it in a neat way, I'm going to map out the property domain to an individual column, and I'm going to name it really well, domain from email. That will put the result that is nested in the results of one column individually into another column. So now we have domain from email. Okay, cool. That is the first set of domains. The next thing I'm going to do, and this is where this beauty of how you can be creative with Clay in order to get to the result you need. I'm actually going to do a Google search for the domain, which is, I believe, the simplest way to get there. Let's do a Google search, perform search, and the search query is going to be hitting slash or forward slash and then selecting company name from the list of columns. So do a Google search for that company name, space, website, probably the simplest search anyone can do. I'm going to limit the number of results to 1 because that has to be the first result. And I'm going to, this is another powerful Clay feature in order to save credits. I'm going to run a conditional formula, which is basically a JavaScript telling the column like when to run and when not to run. And I'm going to use AI to write that JavaScript. I don't have to write the JavaScript, and I'm going to say run only if email is empty. Generate formula on the right side that will show a little preview, which is really good to estimate, or not to estimate, to see if the formula runs the way I want it to run. And here's a little thing, you know, where in this case email has this this symbol, but I still want it to run. So I have to think about another way. How can I prompt this the right way? And let's say run only if email does not contain at. So here it will not run. When it's empty, it will run because it doesn't contain at. But this one is not empty, but it also doesn't contain an at symbol, so it will run. Output is correct. Then in the right side, continue to add fields where I can immediately map out some of the results that will be found by this integration, by this column, but I'm not going to do that just now. And let's test it with 10 runs because it's something that costs Clay credits, so I want to know if it produces good results. Oh, something I should have said in the beginning. Actually, very important right from the start to limit the number of rows that are shown. In this case, I'm going to set the row limit to, let's say, 25. That should be a good amount. That means even if I hit run on a certain column, it will only run for 25 and not the complete list. Okay, so we already have some good results here. It doesn't run where we already have a domain, and it shows some undefined result in a certain case. Okay, so what do we do with that? If I really want to get to domains for all cases, I could try different Google searches, but let's say in this case it's not perfect, and even if it would find the domain as a second or third or fourth item, how do I tell Clay programmatically that this is actually the domain? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the conditional formulas with another feature of Clay, which is a Clagent, which is an LLM instructed scraping agent, I think you can call it. My words, not theirs. So this is how that's gonna look. And I'm doing one thing. I copied the prompt from another workflow where I used it in order not to spend that time on experimenting. This is not what this video is about, but then I'm going to use, oops, Clagent. Let's just enter it. Clagent. And entering the prompt, company name. So the prompt is super simple. Find a website for the company, institution, or person with this name. Only output the result. Do not explain or comment your work. Give me the bare domain. keeping it simple, maybe I could leave that out, but anyways, I'm going to use GPT 3.5 and I'm actually going to use Clay's API key. In this case, it's much better to use your own API keys, but I have absolutely completely maxed out my rate limits in Clay for the month, in OpenAPI for the month, so I'm going to use Clay's OpenAPI key here. And then, very important, to use the conditional formula of only run if both conditions are true. Let's see if that works. Company email does not contain ad and perform search. So here we go, and search result is empty. And here this is one of the things that could look tricky in the beginning. So I'm going to the perform search field, and then I'm going deep into the nested properties in order to get to the property that I want to be empty in order to run this Clagent, which means search results, first search result, and then we have the link empty. Let's see if that works. Perfect, that makes sense. So this Clagent will only search for the company domain if the other two columns don't have the data we want. Output is correct. Save and run for 10 rows, and that should, okay, something's off. Okay, perfect. Just took a second. So that should lead to exactly this. Perform search for domain. Let's rename this. So here we go. And this Clagent does not only do a Google search, but it actually does multiple Google searches in order to get to this result. And that I call find domain via Clagent. And because I let it run as a conditional formula, it only runs for the one where it didn't work. So you know what? Let's run this for all of the rows. And here I use right-click into the column and then run column, run all rows that have or haven't run errors, meaning I don't overspend of running the whole column again. Then the Google search will happen for those where the conditions are met, and in this case actually we only had one where the Google search didn't lead to a result. And here comes something that's also a really neat, I wouldn't call it trick, but really good best practice in Clay, which is merging columns. So because I've now in one of the three columns the company domain, and I want one column that just contains all the domains. That is merge columns, and here I basically just have to point it to the right direction and the right fields, the right properties where to get it from. So first try domain from email. That's the truest data we have. Then try the Google search for domain, search results, the first one, and here's the link. That's going to be the next one. And then try the last result with the web scraper that we used with Clagent. That's the result, save settings, and that should lead to a domain for each individual company. That's already pretty sweet when you consider that you get to a 100% result with these three steps. And based on this, we can now do further work. Just gonna clean this up a little bit and call it final company domain, so I can use that in further steps. And the next thing I'm going to do, and this is after some experimentation, what's the best way to get there, but I'm going to search on that domain for the PR, press, or media contact. And I've experimented with a lot of prompts for the Clagent to do that. This is again not part of this video. Just to give an idea, this is how this experimentation can look like. That's actually not the right view. Find media contact. This is how that would look like many different tries to see which Clagent runs the best. That is not something that's usually done. That was for me to really go deep into how to do this programmatically. So next time I can just build on that like I'm doing now. So I have my domains. I'm gonna add the Clagent. And some complexity is that I'm using the feature that I can use different models for Clagent. I'm a big fan of Claude and the cheapest model, Haiku, which I'm going to select here. So what's happening here is that I use Clagent with my Anthropic API key. This is a little user interface thing that's going to be resolved. It currently says OpenAPI API key, but when I select my Claude API key, this is what's going to be used. And I'm going to paste in the prompt I have from my other table where I explored all of this. I'm going to enter the right domains, which is the final domain that I've just put together. This is the prompt I'm going to be using for that. Since this is not prompt centric, I'm not going to go into too much detail of that, but it's always giving context, directing what to do, being really prescriptive how the output should look like, and then a few things that you always need, like give it a destination when it doesn't find things, like an NA, things like that. Selecting the correct model, max cost. Okay, let's just go for something really cheap here, even though it won't matter so much. And then I'm going to run it for the first 10 rows to see if some unexpected behavior happens, especially with prompts. That is always the right approach because it kind of never is right on the first try. So let's see what happens here. Why do we have errors? Interesting. Let's run it again just to see what happens. The errors turn actually into NAs, which is not optimal, but both are actually in the end the same result. So here a few are found. And since LLMs are non-deterministic on different runs, it will actually produce different results. And I'm gonna say, you know what, let me run with this. So I'm gonna run it for the whole table. In this case, only for the 25 that I've selected previously to show, 25 rows. Clagent will run. And here we go. This is what it currently looks like. And what you could say is, oh wow, this is like such a bad result. It doesn't have so many media contacts. But actually, most of those companies don't have a media contact, and we're going to have a fallback thing. What we're going to do if that is the case, we're going to basically reach out to the CEO or CMO. But in the end, this is actually a pretty good result, depending on how or looking at how many of those companies actually have media contacts. And here's a little trick that works really well for workflows like this. So let's say find media contact, and that is running this thing with Haiku. And now I'm gonna duplicate that column, find media contact, and that is GPT 3.5. Find media contact. Let's use, in this case, clay credits for that. The rest of the prompt stays exactly the same, but what I'm going to change is that it's a conditional formula. Run only if the previous one, the result, contains NA core is empty. And what that does is it runs the exact same prompt with a different model for those where we didn't get a result. The reason this is powerful is because different models get, just frankly, different results. Why is that an error? Okay, let's look into it. Error, you must enter a Claude Anthropic API key. That's my mistake. I'm gonna change the model down here to GPT 3.5. Run again. We can already see that the conditional formula is working, because here we have contact and in the others we didn't. And there we go. We find stuff that we didn't find with the other model. Okay, this didn't take the change. So let's do this again. Contact GPT 3.5. 3.5. There we go. And this looks okay. So let's run it for the rest of the column. And again, run all rows that haven't run or have run errors. So we don't spend credits on every of the rows. And here we go. I'm gonna do a reload because there seems to be a UI thing. So I'm actually just gonna hit reload on this page. Right, okay, so what do we have here? We now have results in the haiku column. We have results in the GPT 3.5 column. And now, since I have the data of the Clagents in one column, I will have to extract that data in a format that I can use further. And for that, the output is in a very structured format. So let's use that example. The result is, it's pretty hard to see, contact name, in this case press, and contact email press@diamandis.com. So this is always in this format, and this is another super powerful feature of Clay. In this case, I'm gonna actually do a little thing to have it really neat. I add a new column, which is gonna be a formula. And I'm just going to paste the formula, not to type it out for too long. But this is what it's going to do. It's going to get, meaning look into this result, haiku result, which will contain the email in this specific format. And then only look between the brackets, extract what comes after contact email, but before the bracket. Generate formula. And what this does, it looks like not in an AI way, but like in a very formulaic way at this result. And it can extract the pure clean data that is contained in there. This output is correct. I'm going to save that. And then let me actually rename that. That is PR email from Clagent 1. I'm just making that super prescriptive here, and I'm basically duplicating that and using it for the other one, for Clagent 2. Change the input because now I want to look into the result of the second Clagent. Generate formula. On the right side, I will see the preview of that. Okay, that looks good. Output is correct. And now I have, for the first and the second column, the results. And those, of course, I also want to merge. Meaning merge columns. I'm going to point it to the first one. And I'm going to point it to the second one. Save settings. And here I got the collected emails from first and second run, which is mostly press emails, but also some individuals. Of course, I can also extract the name and so on and so on, but in this case, speed was really important to us, and we believe the proposition of what we sent is much more relevant than the hyper-personalization. So in this case, we are actually really just going to run with that email. And maybe it's interesting to add how you push this into a Google Sheet. And for this, I'm just using another integration. Sheets, lookup, add or update row. And this is basically a lot of clicking around. So let's take the URL. Actually, let me take this one. Not sure if that makes a difference. Let me take this URL, paste the spreadsheet URL, destination. In the destination, I have three columns: company name, company domain, press email, and that I basically have to map out. So let me quickly do that. Lookup column is going to be the company domain. Maybe I should have put that first. Actually, I think I did. Company domain. Then the value I want to look up for that is final company domain from my workflow. And then I want to add a row or update a row if that is found. I want to add a row value. Company name, I select company name. I always have that. Company domain, that should be the final company domain. And company press email is the last column, which I haven't named well yet. But let's do that afterwards. And I also want to update those. Company name, update company domain. I don't think anything would really change in the workflow, but it's neat when everything gets automatically updated in case something changes in the workflow. And then very important, company email. If that changes, it definitely should be updated. And I only want to run the Google Sheets integration if company actually let me okay, so maybe that will not run because I think this is interesting. So I've put in some work in this integration, which is the Google Sheets integration, but I don't want to run it. So I'm just going to click on save and don't run, because that means basically just saves it, but wouldn't run. Let me actually call that PR email final. That should then be reflected. Press email, PR email. Okay, let's leave it like that. I'm gonna hit reload once because it didn't show the results of the PR email here. Reloading is always a good quick fix for some user interface stuff. And let me get back into the integration details here, run settings. So this has now been updated to the correct column title. It also shows now all the results. I'm sure this will work then perfectly now too. Run only if email final contains data. Will run for some, won't run for others. Hit save and run for 25 rows in this view. And if that has been done correctly, here we should now wonderfully see the data being added. Yeah, that is a little workflow, and if there are any questions, just reach out, probably best on LinkedIn.